Hey guys, what's up? I'm just going to do a quick patch note review for patch 3.13. Was just announced today on Hi-Res TV, or just released, I guess. And first stuff is just skins and normal stuff. I'm not going to go through all that. You guys can check them out if you want on the VOD, twitch.tv/Hi-Res TV. And you can go check out all the skins. They're pretty cool, and the new Freya model is really cool. Achievements, I'm going to skip all that stuff as well. Miscellaneous, just like random fixes. Not random, but god achievements now show on the specific gods page. That's pretty cool. Just simple stuff like that. And then item changes, like this is when the actual patch part I care about. So, End Style was changed with the mid-season patch or whatever to silence magical gods, or silence gods around you when you're hit by a magical ability. It hasn't been picked up much from what I've seen, so they lowered it to 2,000 gold. That's a good change, maybe entice people to try it a little more. Then the Glowing Emerald tree. This is the tree that builds into Mill of Renewal and Stone of Gaia and Gauntlet of Thebes. They reduced all the gold cost of all the items in this tree by 100. This is an interesting change. This is like the second or third time I think since this tree was created at the start of season 3 that they've reduced the gold cost of all the items. And eventually, if they keep doing this, the items are just going to be overstated because they'll be way too cost efficient. I'm not sure if they're quite at that point yet because protection is just so good. Also, if you want to build health items, normally something like a wing blade or the new ritual dagger is better. But overall, this tree is probably the least picked up tree in the entire game, so making changes to it is good. I'm not sure if this will make the items any more or less viable. I think in a 6-item build, you probably buy them about the same amount of time. I don't think... The only change I could maybe see is if Guardians become viable in the Soul Lane, then maybe a Warrior would buy Stone of Gaia similarly to how they did last season. Obviously, it doesn't give magical prod anymore, but just the regen is really nice. But that seems like a stretch too. Like, why wouldn't you just go magical prot early on? So I really have no idea. It's still kind of weird. Mill of Renewal could be picked up sometimes if a jungler or a support or even a soul laner feels like they want a little more CDR. But basically it's just a toss-up. I guess people will try to build this tree more. I don't know if it makes it that much better or not. Then, sorry, that was just TeamSpeak. Mark of the Vanguard was changed to remove HP 5 from this item. A lot of people complained about Vanguard being like really OP. I actually don't think it was good, like, at all. It only ever got picked up in terms of like a consistent game-to-game basis. The only time it really got picked up was for Guardian Soul Laners. From my experience, like from all the professional Soul Laners I've talked to, which is a good handful of them, probably over half of them, none of them really liked to play Warriors with Vanguard and Red Pot. None of them thought it was good. Like, Bluestone or Death Toll was just better for clear, and it didn't risk a 450 pot if you died. And Vanguard's overall tanky benefits didn't really matter, because as a soul laner, you're already, like, extremely tanky going into the early game. It's better if you kind of build for the mid game and get those power spikes a little quicker. So I think it was kind of an underwhelming item. It's definitely good to change because it was a little overstated, and just a few changes could have made it OP and could have made the meta and Soul Lane like really unbearable. I think HP 5 was definitely the way to nerf the item. It just gives too much sustain. But I think the only god who actually picked it up like every game was Cabrakan. If you played him Soul Lane, and he would get Purple Pot, and that transitions into Purple and Red Pot, which are the 450 pots, are now temporarily removed and they're being reworked. This is... Okay, so the fact that they're gone for a little bit and they're looking to be reworked is good. I'm skeptical of what the redesign will be. I think that power pots should not be a thing. It just kind of follows what I've been like really pushing for this and Golden Bow to get out of the game. I hated both of them because it forces players to play for the early game. Because if one 2v2, say mid jungle, that 2v2, If one 2v2 goes double red pot and purple pot, and the other one doesn't get any 450 pot, you just lose early game, and you just lose the game because you get outpushed so hard that any good team can just take so much off of that pressure, and it just forces you into a situation where everybody has to buy 450 pot, and it makes the meta turn into an artificial early game meta where, yeah, maybe some gods who have weak early clear can't be or could be played because now their clear is helped by a 450 pot, but at the same time, it just hides weaknesses and it overall cripples variety, not in gods, but it cripples variety in team comps because every team comp has to be geared towards fighting before 10 minutes because if you don't, you'll just get bled out and teams will snowball off early pressure. That was why Golden Bow was removed because even though it allowed some more gods to be played, which I still don't like that argument because like now without Golden Bow, stuff like Soul can be played more freely and mages can be played more freely, but anyways, that's another argument. With the 450 pot, now that it's gone, gods can be properly balanced. For example, a god like Scylla, who isn't picked much without 450 pot, they can afford to make her late game more rewarding and make her mid game more rewarding for you actually getting out of the early game because now if they were to buff Scylla's late game right now and she's able to get out of the early game for free because of 450 pot, the god would just become OP. So it's hard for them to balance gods correctly and to force gods into a certain mid or late game role when an item like this is out there that can allow them to get there for free or let them get there so much easier, which is why Golden Bow is annoying because if somebody were to pick something like a Shablanke who is just an insane late game hyper carry, you can't punish them at all because their early game and their early clear is so good that it's really hard to get a reliable lead on them consistently against good players. So it just really hurt the state of balance for the game, and it hurt the design space going forward. So basically, I think it's a good change for now. I'm interested to see what they do moving forward with it. Obviously, the way they redesign it completely alters how this works, or like how people's opinions on this will be. So it's hard to tell, but I would like to see power pots just removed, like maybe even permanently. Or another suggestion a lot of people have created was just put a level requirement on it. Maybe you can't buy it till like level 20. Or maybe level 20 is a bit late, like level 15, level 12, like whatever. Uh, Something like that would be good. Just get it out of early game starts. It should not be a thing. And I think Pon addressed that on the actual VOD when they were going through the patch notes on High Res TV. I think Pon addressed that they're looking at a couple different options for the redesign for the next patch in a couple weeks, but for their foresight or their vision for the item, it won't be available at the start, so that's good. Runeforged Hammer. Similar to Ansel, we like Runeforged serving a specific role, which is to allow players who build into the... Wait, why can't I read? I don't have my glasses on, sorry. Which is to allow players who build into or have slows to provide a powerful utility to themselves and their team. While effective, the stats... Okay, while effective, it should be a comma. Okay, this is not written very well. Sorry to whoever at Hi-Res did this. While effective, the stats of the item provided were not enough to justify the high cost and low stats it came with. Okay, that was actually a pain to read. I'm sorry. Decrease cost from 2650 to 2400, and increase the physical power from 30 to 40. I know they reworked this item in season, or not in season 3, in the mid-season patch. I actually don't think I've seen it picked up once. I don't know if it'll be picked up with this change. I really have no idea. That's probably for Soul Laners to decide, and I'm not sure how they feel about this item. If I had to guess, it still won't get picked up at all. Soul Eater. Okay, this is a big one. So, Soul Eater was in the meta because it was buffed to give 30% of your health pool as basically a reserved health pool, where when you would be knocked below a threshold, which I believe is 25% of your total life, it would heal you for that reserved life, which was 30%, which would then put you back up to 55% health. So you basically, instead of having 100% of your life bar when this item was fully stacked, it had 130% of your life bar. So that was why the item was good. It basically gave you more effective health as a hunter, and it allowed you to bait people a lot harder because your natural instinct before you really get attuned to playing against this is you see a hunter low and you try to kill them, and then you use your escape to maybe dive them, and then they heal, and then their team collapses, and then you die. So the way Hi-Rez has adjusted this is they believe the item was overperforming as a sustain and healing item, and I think most people agree with that. They definitely agree with that at a competitive level. So they removed 0.5% lifesteal bonus per stack. So basically this means that there would be situations where you wouldn't get knocked into that threshold at 25%, but when you had your Soul Eater stacks, if you had it full stacked at I believe it's 20 stacks, when you had all 20 of those stacks, say you would get poked out from like 100% down to 60%, you would gain bonus lifesteal for those stacks. So without consuming the stacks, you would have more lifesteal. So not only do you have a reserved life pool for when you get too low, but if you get poked, you heal against the poke quicker than any other lifesteal item, which is just insanely strong. That was way back like Season 2, Season 1, when lifesteal was really, really probably overpowered. The number one way they nerfed it was to take off out of combat lifesteal and to nerf it. A good example of this is against Fire Giant and Gold Fury. Your lifesteal is significantly reduced. I think against Fire Giant you may not even be able to lifesteal at all. I think you can actually. I think it's like 50% of your normal lifesteal or something like that that you can do against Fire Giant and Gold Fury. And that change was specifically made because out of combat lifesteal or just lifesteal for a hunter to sit on an objective was way too strong. Basically, that effect on this item went against all of those previous changes, so they removed that. I actually think that's a good change, but because of how strong the item was, that's actually the biggest change to this item in terms of its viability, is removing that, because now Soul Eater doesn't offer that much. Like, Aussie provides you extra lifesteal when you get below 15%, I believe it is. And it gives you pen, and it gives you attack speed, and it gives you lifesteal, whereas Soul Eater was just giving you attack speed and lifesteal, and that was it. And then it was basically a utility item. Whereas now the utility is kind of being taken away from it, and it doesn't have great damage stats. But so it'll be interesting to see where this is. And even after that huge change, they also reduce the amount of healing when the stacks are consumed. So instead of you having 130% of your life total, you now have 120%. So just 10% less life in the reserve for the passive. If I had to guess, this item will not be picked up again in a normal hunter build. I think people will go back to building Aussie. I don't know about Devo Gloves. Devo Gloves could be interesting. I think that because items like Iqval are so good, and because I believe Executioner got buffed recently, I think people would lean more towards the Aussie. Just to have that attack speed and shred would be really strong. But I obviously don't play ADC. I'm not sure what people are looking towards building, but I'd be surprised if Soul Eater stayed as a every game auto buy for hunters. And Watcher's Gift. Okay, so I'm going to start off by saying I have no idea why they changed this item. I guess I should read it. Watcher's Gift should enable gods in the early game to rely on sustain instead of raw survivability. We have added HP 5 to make the sustain more reliable and adjusted the mana and health return on this item to compensate. Overall, with the change, Watcher's Gift will provide more health and mana during the laning phase. So, one, this was the best starter item in the game, and I actually don't even think it was close. Like, this item is insane. It's been auto-buy for supports basically since it was released. It's so good for so many reasons. So, one, in dual lane, you get 6 creeps per 30 seconds, so you get 12 creeps in a minute. So if you kill all 12 creeps, and you don't last hit any of them, so you get all 12 passive triggers, you used to heal for 120 health. Now, you heal for 84 health, I believe, right? Yeah, 84 health. So, you lose, what's that math? 36 health? I don't know why I can't do math in my head. So you lose 36 health every minute from the passive. But you gain 24 mana, and you have HP 5. So first, I actually think you get more effective health in the laning phase out of this item, because the early HP 5 is better than the return on the creeps, because you're getting, you're getting 12 ticks of the HP 5. Like, you're getting 12 ticks from the HP 5 and you're getting 12 ticks from the creeps in that minute, right? So you get 12 minions in a minute in a you get 12 minions in a minute and you get 12 ticks of HP 5 in a minute. So they reduced 3 health from the ticks from the minions, but they added 5 health to the ticks from the HP 5. So basically, you get a net 2 health per 5 from this item, if that makes sense. I know that math was a little weird and I stuttered a lot when I said it, but basically you gain way more health with this item. You actually you actually gain like 24 health per minute, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it definitely adds up. And even though all this stuff sounds like minor changes, like why is this such a big deal? The reason this is a big deal is because, in my opinion, now that the mana per passive trigger is higher, I think it's much more comfortable to just get health pots and multi-pots in laning phase. Like, this is something I've done for a while. I think it's very rare that I go into a laning phase and I buy mana pots instead of multi-pots along with the health pots. And now that you have extra mana from killing a wave, you can probably just get multi-pots on almost every single god and every single laning phase, which gives you even more effective health and more burst healing, because now you can pop both of your potions for a huge healing burst and you can take a ton of poke for free, basically. So I really don't know why they made this change to Watchers. I think they're trying to make it so that Guardians feel like they have more control over the early laning phase, which I think is a good move. I don't think it should be on the Hunters. The whole point of the support role is to keep your ADC safe and clear for them, kind of. So just from a design standpoint, I like where they're trying to go. I don't know if this was the way to do it, but you'll see a lot of more aggressive laning phases out of support players now that they have this extra health to deal with in lane. God changes, Aphrodite, new passive meter. Again, you're going to have to watch the VOD if you want to see this. It's a nice change, though. And then they just fixed some emote, whatever. Okay, Cabrakan. So Cabrakan has been really, really potent the last few patches. He does a ton of damage. Vanguard helped him to stay alive and be really tanky. And then Purple Pot boosted his early game damage and his early game clear to just make him insane. So, Purple Pot's gone. Vanguard is nerfed. They then nerfed the Prots 1 is 2, and the damage 1 is 2, which was a really overstated ability. I actually really agree with that change. I don't know how I feel about the alt change. I actually don't think I like it. Cabrakan is kind of already an early game god. They buffed his early game, which is normally pretty risky. It'll probably be fine because Purple Pot and Vanguard are nerfed, but they make his late game worse, and that it like isn't that big of a deal as a change. It's just a change. I wouldn't say it's a buff or a nerf. It's like a slight buff in the early game, and it's a pretty decent nerf in the late game. But more often than not, you just use the wall for the damage anyways. Like, the wall utility is obviously really good, but Cabrakan, if you're a soul laner, can just one-shot people. So, I'm not sure. Cabrakan definitely should have gotten adjusted, but it may end up being too much because they nerfed his 2 core starter items and then nerfed him in 2 different abilities. I think I would get rid of this change. I would just keep... the 2 changes really good, I think, but I don't like the alt change. That's just me. Erlang Shen, they added emotes, thank God. Really needed those. Fafnir, underhanded tactics, fixed an issue where this ability was done improperly. Obviously that's good, it's not intended. Okay. This change actually tilts me so hard. So, before the mid-season patch, Guan Yu was one of the better supports. He was the only viable healer in the game because he could just keep spamming out these little heals. As you can see right there, it was like 170 when you maxed his heal. And his passive meter amplified that amount of healing up to double, so it could go anywhere from 170 to 340, depending on how many passive stacks he had. So, this used to be the max number of passive stacks before the mid-season change. It was this amount of healing on this amount of passive stacks. He gets a passive stack every time he does or takes damage. So for every tick he deals or takes, he gets a stack. So, 20 stacks really isn't that much, for one. 2, they increased the healing, so he is now a better healer than he used to be. And they made his passive affect all of his other abilities last patch. I really don't understand this change at all. Guan was already in a perfectly fine spot. If anything, he was probably still a little over the point of balance. especially for a support. I really think this might make him like one of the best gods in the game, and it doesn't really make sense to me. He now has, with his new passive rework from last patch, he now has more prot shred, more CC, and now they gave him more healing, and he gets to use his passive more on all of his other abilities because the stacks were reduced. So I actually would like to see both of these changes reverted. I think Guan was in a fine spot. If anything, he was a little too strong, and now he's even stronger. I really don't understand this at all, so I'm really against this, or really skeptical, I guess, at face value. I'll see how it works when I play against it, but I don't like it at all. Merc is an interesting god. A lot of people were upset about Merc when Golden Bow was removed from the game because he was one of the gods other than a hunter that synergized really well with it. In the past, because of Golden Bow, it used to make Merc's 1 and the procs off of his 1 and his crit way too strong because he would just poke everybody like crazy and he would do way too much damage. And also his passive synergized with it way too much because it would just boost all of his damage like crazy. So in the past when Merc was good, they would nerf his passive meter, how much power he gained from it, and they would nerf his 1. So what they did this time was they changed the duration of his 2, which is his steroid, to 5 seconds at all ranks. So this means that early game he can fight a little bit more because he has more uptime on his passive. I think that's a good change. And then special delivery, they increase the damage it does and the physical power scaling for a minion. This is just like okay. You don't really use your 3 for damage that much. It's good for clear, like wave clear maybe if you're split pushing or something, like whatever, it's pretty good. Reducing the mana cost is really nice though, because it lets Merc freely use his dash to farm the jungle better early game, which means that he can try to get online quicker because you're able to run from camp to camp much quicker. So the mana cost on the special delivery is really good, and I like the passive change because he already scales on his passive with the movement speed he gains per level. So that's probably a good change. Merc needed a little bit of help after the Golden Bow being removed, so I think overall that's a good change. Okay, Rama is one of the premier basic attack hunters who was affected by the removal of Golden Bow. He is getting an upward adjustment this patch on Astral Strike to maximize his basic attack strength. So, 1, increasing the bonus damage is fine, helps us clear a little bit. That was Ram's problem in the past, is that once these ability-based hunters like a Hou Yi or a Neith, gods like that, once they got really good in the meta, and the meta just suited them well, it was really hard to play Rama. He just couldn't contest with clear. He would get outpushed, he would lose his jungle camps, there wasn't much he could do. So, buffing his clear is fine. I don't like the increased slow duration. And the reason why is, 1, most people, I think maybe Zap levels his 1 first. I think most Rama players do not level their 1 first. They level their rollout and their steroid, which is his 2. So, you're giving them the same crowd control or slow potential from this ability at level 1 as you are at level 5, which in general for most crowd control abilities is a really bad idea because it makes a god's level 1 so strong. For example, if you're a Rama, you can stick on people. If you just get 5 passive arrows, you can do a 10-second slow on somebody at level 1. That's actually so insane. Like, I think they should really make that scale. Or they could just change it to like 1.25 or 1.5 seconds. It's hard for Ram to stick on people in the early game because his slow duration isn't enough, but when you get to the mid and late game, when your attack speed is really ramped up, you can keep that slow on somebody, the 1 second slow, you can get the full 5 seconds out of it, no problem. And it's really easy for Ram to just shred a target. 2 seconds, like doubling the amount of time you can slow someone, is actually pretty insane. So I don't really like that change. I think it's a little too much. The clear is good. This part right here is good. I think this should either scale per level in the ability, or it should be toned back a little bit. But overall, giving Ram a little bit more utility is good. So I guess I like that he's getting buffed. I don't like the way they buffed him, if that makes sense. So I don't like part of the way that they buffed him. And Thor got a new passive meter, and that's pretty much it. Sorry I didn't... I think that's pretty much it. In terms of the meta, I'm not sure what you can expect to see. Mid pressure, in terms of the 2v2, will be a little more passive, and won't punish slow clearing gods quite as much, which is nice. Soul Lane won't have to deal with Guardians as much with the Vanguard HP 5 nerf, which is nice. Think that's about it from this patch. Hunters will not be as hard to kill, which I think is also a good thing. So I think there's a lot of positive adjustments in this patch. There are a couple questionable changes that I don't like, such as the Cabrakan or the Guan Yu buff. I think this is like one of the worst buffs I've ever seen on a god who didn't really have any problems. Merc's changes were good. Overall, Ram's is probably fine. So overall, good patch, I guess. Couple gods that should really be reverted, in my opinion. Guan Yu being the main one. But yeah, it'll be fun to see how it plays out, and thanks for watching. Peace.